And we're live, I think. Live, maybe not alive, but we're live.
Live and in studio. Uh, so I am 1,500 miles away tonight in Cleveland, Ohio, doing the corporate slut thing.
Oh, gross.
Yes, mucho
Gross.
gross. And you are back from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, back from Pennsylvania.
I guess we should once again introduce ourselves. My name is Isaac, Guns for Everyone.
My name is Edgar Antillon.
And all right, so Pennsylvania was the makers match, the fourth or the fifth?
Fourth.
Fourth. Okay. I saw the pictures. How many people do you think were there?
Overall, there was probably nearly 100 humans there.
Okay. How does that compare to last year?
A little bit less than last year in terms of overall participants and or the competitors. That was about the same, hovering around 50ish, and then the rest spectators and staff and shit like that. So
Groupies.
groupies,
Groupies.
groupies.
So did that same dude win again?
No, no. The winners were different this year. None of
Okay.
last year's winners were this year's winners. Um, yeah, but it was good. It was fun times.
So
Good
for those who
times.
don't know, the makers match is the only 3D printed gun competition in the country.
It is the only one that is mainstream, I guess you could call it that. Sellouts, I guess you could call it that. It's not underground. It's not hitting. There's another one. They keep it very hush hush, and nobody knows about it. It's it's mixed in with some Bitcoin people that like to wear their hats made of tinfoil and all that shit.
Do you have any overlap? Any of the same people showing
Yeah,
up?
probably. I don't know their list. I don't. Again, like I said, the other one is kind of hush hush, and it's not really a competition per se. It's more of a let's get together and shoot guns type stuff. Ours is the really the only one that is an actual competition, actual prizes, and people know about it. And one of the missions is for it to be normalized, right? So the problem with a lot of this stuff is a lot of people want to keep it hush hush, and the problem with that is obviously nobody knows about it, and if nobody knows about it, then it gets very secretive. I think that's one of the issues with like the Masons and shit like that, right? Like where they're so secretive that they think that they're the ones that created the aliens that made the pyramids that fucking creates Bitcoin and tracks your phone and all that shit. And it's probably not. In fact, most humans you talk to that are Masons are like, hey, we just get together
Drink.
uh, and drink. But of course, the problem because they're so secretive, we're like, yeah, that's just what they want you to believe. So by making it this way and transparent and out and open is there are no questions, right? So politicians and media can look at this and say, fuck, people make guns and just want to have fun and it's part of the culture and um yeah, so it's always
It's
it's always
also
good.
part of the legal argument for things like assault weapons, which is, the Supreme Court decision saying things that are in common usage should not be banned. Well, like how does it become common usage if it's a secret that you're
Correct.
using it? So,
Correct.
um, so in this competition, you've got like kit guns. So somebody put together a polymer 80 and can compete, and then you have like some of the other categories like.
Yeah, so the divisions would be DIY. So you made it yourself, whether that be 3D printed or you CNC'd it. Shit, I mean, if somebody wanted to fucking get a chisel and mill out a fucking block of aluminum and
Could you
go
bring
about
a
it.
pipe with like a nail to shoot
No,
shotgun
just because
shells?
because there is no shotgun category.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you could, I suppose, but there is no shotgun category. So
It also has to pass a safety inspection. Is that right?
yeah, we do safety inspections and make sure that they are actually safe to shoot. I know it sounds lame, but nobody wants to get hurt during doing this stuff. And when you 3D print stuff and when you DIY stuff, if you use the wrong filament to wrong temperatures, it could crack and obviously cause some injury. So for safety and legal reasons, obviously we have to do all that shit. But yeah, the DIY stuff, the kit stuff doesn't get safety inspected because that already we're maybe incorrectly trusting that P80 and 80% arms and all of
Yeah,
the
but what kind of questions would you even ask? Like, unless there was an obvious problem with the gun, like there was a big crack in it,
correct
you'd have to just trust the manufacturing process.
correct yeah
Yeah.
for sure.
So I went to this last year. It was my first time, only time having gone to it. It was quite a bit of fun watching all these nerds run around with guns and act nerdy. I mean, like these are some of the biggest nerds I've ever met.
Nerds, dude.
Yeah.
And like
But
fucking the worst part is that they're teetering on batshit crazy and the conspiracy side nerds. So you get a lot of really fun fucking flat earthery conversations with these humans about stuff, and that's why they're so secretive about it.
yeah, they're,
Um,
they're
so
trying
the
to hide
convers
their true selves.
yeah, but it's fun. So it's interesting humans. It's interesting conversations. So it's always a good time. This is probably the only time they leave the cave. This is probably the once a year they leave the fucking cave.
To venture into Monroeville, Pennsylvania. Um, the the weather. How was the weather? Did it hold up?
Good.
Okay, yeah. Last year we had a little rain, but it wasn't too bad.
So we had it this year as well, but not as bad as it was um, last year. So it was still good.
Good. Yeah, I dropped into Mr. Snowflake's Instagram
Not Snowflake
feed.
makes.
This is the guy I was talking about.
Yeah, Mr. Snow makes.
Mr.
Uh,
Snow makes.
yeah, he says Mr. Snowflakes.
What? That's just the way I read it. This guy that you're putting on the screen is the most intense dude ever.
Yeah, this guy's serious about his craft, and you gotta admire it. This guy is. I mean, this guy is
Uh,
Matt motherfucking Abrams, two-time world champion. Who else can say they are two-time world champion? He's won half of them, 50%
oh,
of the championships.
I did the first
This
time
is
I'd ever
the
done
guy.
this was last year. I don't know, I ran one of the competition stages and I was
Yeah.
explaining the course of fire to him and he was just like, looking like through me, like, okay, could you repeat that again? But dude shot really well.
He shots good. He
Probably needs
shoots
to
good.
take a couple Ativan, but
Yeah, Matt's cool, man. He's a
oh,
cool
look at
guy.
that. I didn't see that.
Yeah, card split.
Did anybody get that?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
in
cool.
fact, one of the winners got it because of that, because that was a 30-point in your favor um, shot, or 30 seconds in your favor shot. So,
Really?
hey, yeah. So
Was the only penalty for missing it? Was it time, or did you
no,
lose
no, no.
points?
There was no penalty if you. Yeah, correct. So yeah,
Okay.
you're right. The time it took you to take the shot
Okay.
would have been the only quote unquote penalty.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, no, it was good time. It was fun times.
So partnered with you in this is Rob Pincus and
Yeah, so the way that works is Guns for Everyone National. Us, we are the sanctioning body, and we help kind of organize it. Officially or unofficially, Rob Pincus is the match director, and then Mr. Snow makes. He this year was part of the committee. So he helped organize and help set up and all that stuff.
And it looks like Gideon Optics was back again to sponsor.
So JSD Supply. So Jordan, who owns all of these people, is I'm gonna put him up here just to show him some love. That's JSD Supply. He also owns Gideon Optics, and then he also owns on top of Gideon Optics. Let's see if he has them up here. Nah. Yeah, PR Triggers. He also owns PR Triggers, which all of the contestants went home with one of these.
Wow.
So every single participant got a Glock binary trigger. That's what this is right here.
Oh, that's cool.
Have you? Yeah.
Wow.
If you guys are not watching this, currently showing a little clip from their
man.
website.
I might have to get one of those before they ban them in Colorado.
So this is a binary trigger for the Glock, which is a $250 value, regular price, and every single contestant got one, and then part is prizes, and
Dude, that's cool.
some people got to win some Gideon optics, which I have one, and I think it's fair to say, even Jordan would say it, that for what it is, it's a really good product. You know, he's not trying to pretend, and nobody's pretending that it's an $800 optic. But it's pretty good. I'm not a huge
Good
fan.
customer service too, because when I got one last year, had the wrong screws in it, and I sent them an email. I had the new screws in the mail like 2 days later.
No shit.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
And then Firearms Policy Coalition,
FPC, and then on top of FPC, we had our homies at
FLP,
Farmers Legal Protection. Also threw in some stuff, cash as well.
Nice.
So yeah, we had a good bunch of 2AO, Second Amendment organization. They also sponsored it. So yeah, we had a good crew.
Good. It's good to see that match is continuing to run relatively smoothly. I mean, you guys are only 4 years in, and when I was there 3 years in, it seemed like a pretty well running machine.
Yeah.
Good organization. Yeah, so very cool to see. All right. I went and did co-teaching with WyoTac, WYOTAC. That's Jason. Last name I can't pronounce. Cotreau.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
I was hoping you would know.
No fucking clue.
I got to go up and participate in intuitive defensive shooting fundamentals course up in Fort Collins last weekend. Very cool. Got to meet Michael Bain. If you guys don't know who Michael Bain is, he's a TV producer, radio producer, podcaster, print media. Like if it's media and guns related, he's probably been involved at some point in the last 30 years. Fun guy to talk to. Very, very silly, funny. Yeah, he was fun. So, and good students. We had at least one shooter. I believe it was only one shooter who had never fired a gun before. And by the end of the class, she was kicking some serious ass. I say she probably actually, I know we don't compare, like defensive shooting speaking, we don't compare, but if you just look at the class, she was definitely in the top 2 at the end of the class as far as being able to understand and apply the skills on the range. So,
yeah, Michael Bain is also essentially an instructor candidate.
Yeah.
For the IDS program.
Yeah. So Jason brought up something in the class, and I wanted to talk about it. It's a good jumping off point for the kind of things that we talk about. So in the intuitive shooting fundamentals, intuitive defensive shooting fundamentals courses, and on all of our courses that we teach, our concealed carry classes, we talk about the probability or the plausibility principle, limited time and money devoted towards preparation, self-defense training, etc. Um, what do you focus on getting good at and why? And we look at what most probable circumstances first, and then out to plausible. Not worrying about trying to cover everything that's possible, like the Russian paratroopers landing in your neighborhood,
Correct.
things like that. Jason was talking about this plausibility principle in terms of like a national security threat, a like military age men coming across the border, all that stuff. And people believe different things about that. Some people are like, oh, they're just refugees. And some people are like, yeah, they're here to steal other people's jobs, not your job, because you already stole your job, but everybody else's jobs. And some people are worried about an actual military invasion. But I think even in times where you think that there's a crisis, I don't think that, generally speaking, the plausibility principle changes significantly. Use like the mass shooter thing. Oh, there's mass shootings now. It's more likely you'll be in a mass shooting. Yeah, but you'll be way more likely to still be confronting the single attacker in a transitionary space, parking lot or something like that.
Correct.
And so the trick here is like, how do you measure this plausibility? How do you apply what you feel like is plausible versus what is objectively plausible or probable? And I know that this question comes up in classes from time to time. It does for me. Like, how do you approach that question for people, especially people who come in very charged up about reading the news? Like, well, I read that this is happening, and that's why I'm taking the class. You're dealing with people's perception and trying to get them to a point of reality.
Yeah.
But like, how do you do that in a classroom setting?
Yeah, it's always tough, right? Because it's people come in with their own preconceived ideas, and people come in with especially low level. So like if we were to just break down our typical concealed carry classes, most of those humans that show up to the 4 hour class probably don't want to listen to us. They're there because they have to be there. They already have what they believe is the best information possible because it comes from them and only them, and that's all they believe is them. So now you're fighting with that, and it's always difficult to talk about the reality of what is observed and in statistics. The problem with statistics though is I always hesitate going to statistics, and I always hesitate going to the stuff that is quantifiable, because you and I both know that you can manipulate that data a
Yeah,
lot.
just as an example, some of the stats around number of rounds fired in a self-defense incident, it can be very misleading about how we should prepare for that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, Pikas and I were kind of talking about that. There was a book published in the 90s, I believe it was. I forget who published it. Was talking about how the 38 special was the most powerful self-defense round available at that time, because the data shows that 90% of police, I forget exactly what it was, but it was an insane fucking number. 90% of percent of police shootings were stopped in one round with the 38 special. And then people are like, wow, oh shit, the 38 special. But you have to like slow the fuck down, like pump the brakes on that. What kind of gun are cops carrying in the late 80s, early 90s? And you ask almost every fucking police department, and guess what they were carrying? 38 specials.
Mm-hmm.
And then why was it one shot? Well, that's because it's a fucking, they're doing the fucking marksmanship type shooting instead of defensive shooting. So they would take one shot and then do what they did in training, kind of look at it, And then there was no more bad guy, which is consistent with everything we teach nowadays, right? Where you start shooting bad guys, and bad guys don't want to be bad guys anymore because everybody hates getting fucking shot. So was it really the one shot? Is it really a 38 special? If we really look at it, then it's like, no, that's not fucking true. Like it's not true. It's like saying that more white people get pulled over than Mexicans. Like, yeah, motherfuckers, because there's more white people. Like it's just we can't, we have to look at this.
And I think some of that comes
Realistically.
from like a lot of people who get involved in the conversation, especially as instructors, are essentially amateurs when it comes to things like this, like analyzing data.
Yeah.
You know, you might be a really good instructor on the range. You might be able to take grandma and teach her how to put a one round into the head at 30 yards, and that doesn't make you an expert on stats. And
Correct.
I'm not an expert on stats, and I'm like you. I hesitate to go into a lot of detail on that. And when I do, I always try to attack the stat. I always just try to present ways that you could interpret the stat that show you a different conclusion than what everybody accepts as a conclusion.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to give you an answer. I'm just trying to show you how vulnerable it is to manipulation, so you don't take it more seriously than you should. It should be a piece of data. You should be aware of it. You should evaluate it. But you take one stat like that, the 38 special, and all of a sudden you run with it, and now you've got your idea of, well, based on probability, I should only have to carry one round of 38 special. So I want to take a second here and look at Marlon's chat because he was shitting on you. He said that he'd been through the Texas course in Texas. I assume that means the LTC course because it's 8 hours. Didn't need another 8 hours. The 4 hours Edgar gave us was okay. Could improve though. While we're answering the first part of this, what you need or don't need, Marlon, you should tell us why you think Edgar could improve. I want to know what that is.
Yeah.
So
and this is the like gauge based off of what?
Yeah,
Right.
and that's okay. Like that's point is to have the conversation. But backing up the idea, I did not need another 8 hours. You don't know what you need or you don't need. You know, like you. And that's not to say that the 8 you got wasn't good, and that's not to say it is useless. And it may
we all know government mandated training is useless.
Well, what I've heard from most LTC courses is that they're pretty shitty. Because
by nature they have to be, right, because it's a government mandated course.
Right. Yeah. An 8 hour government mandated course. So yeah, it's because you're brown. Miguel goes right to that.
Right to the race.
The reality, like if you're looking at probability principle, probability if you use a gun in self-defense is that you will have almost zero training. I mean, if we just look at the number of gun stats, guns used in self-defense, we look at gun owners, we look at, training, who shows up to training. Most people who carry a gun have only had one course, and that was government required course.
Correct.
And
by the way, in that government required course, let's be honest, most humans that show up to them are not paying attention.
Yeah.
Because they're there because they have to be there.
Yeah.
They're not there.
They're not paying attention because they, I think, implicitly know that the class is bullshit. And also, I think generally speaking, instructors are not like really good at purveying that classroom information in a way that engages. And a lot of that's based on my experience, which could be just a bad sample. But I've definitely had more boring instructors than interesting ones.
And to a degree, when you say bullshit, I think what you mean is not that even if it is a good class, it's a low level, let's check the box type situation.
Right. It's start from the start. People know that you have to take this course, which I think introduces an element of like, I don't really need this information. I just have to check this box. Doesn't matter how good the course may or may not be. You're already starting from like a not serious point of view.
Correct. And that's how you get it with comments.
And I the same way. Like when I took the NRA instructor course, it was the exact same thing. Like I'm a student, I'm there to learn and I'm going to take what I can, but there is definitely an element of like, if we don't cover this, the NRA will get mad. So we're going to do it. Like, okay, well, you just completely compromised the motivation of your students to learn this. So that's why that's one of the many reasons why mandatory training is stupid. Um, So he's saying Donnie Surratt. If you don't mind putting in there what city that was in, not that we're going to know this dude, but I mean, just for the sake of putting information in there. And it says most of the new bill, I assume that means the Colorado training bill that's being proposed, follows much of the Texas course material, and it was just 1-on-2. So 1 instructor, 2 students. And not boring at all. That's good. That's very good. It kind of shows. It's kind of funny though, because like everybody's like, Texas, 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 and now we're getting a bullshit law in our state that models after the Texas law that's been on the books for at least a decade,
which has always been one of the most restrictive requirements to get your concealed handgun permit. Yeah.
Okay, Dallas area. So there's got to be like 500,000 instructors in the Dallas area, I'm sure. But thanks for adding that in there, Donnie Surratt in Dallas, Texas. And so this idea of what training you need, I prefer not to look at it from the idea of what training you need, because you really don't know. It's the training that you prioritize.
Correct.
Your budget, your time, your attention. And why are you doing that?
Correct.
You're doing it to save your life. You're probably not going to have to shoot anybody. That's certainly true, but you probably are going to have to think and act defensively maybe more than once in your adult life. And I think a good concealed carry class addresses the issue of thinking and acting defensively and not just using your gun. But when it comes to using your gun, more practice, more training is useful. I mean, in the right context. It's like, you don't want to be a retard out there. You don't want to like be all thumbs, shooting your hand, forgetting to load your gun, missing your target under stress, like all of that stuff. And you don't.
That's the issue though. Is this is the conversation that is kind of difficult to have, and this is why telling students what to prioritize or not is because students don't have a reference point. So I kind of do a briefing, and I wish Marlon would have said this in class. Right, I always do a briefing, like what was good, what was bad, what you learn, and I take it as a like, oh shit, let's some people do some give some good feedback, because getting feedback in the class is always better than online, like always superior than do it online. But it's what, like, basing off of what, this is the example that I give every time when I'm doing the tactics class, is in the tactics class where I talk about how do you get better, right? So the 3 questions: what am I good at, what should I be better at, and how do I get better? How do I get better is the point that you have, or where you're at, or the reference point that you have is probably 0. So it's just like, how do you know how to get better? How do you know what you're good at? If the only thing you do is go to the range, you have no point of reference, you're not the expert, right? This is why instructors who refuse to take additional higher level courses before, like after the NRA stuff, it's there's significantly better training than the low level NRA stuff. But the instructors always say, well, the instructor says that it was good and it was fun. That's usually because all you're doing is reinforcing the stuff, right? You're not really providing good quality training. You're just reinforcing the bullshit that they believe. And that's usually when people are like, oh, this guy just told me what I wanted to hear. So that shit makes me feel warm and fuzzy. And then when you show up to our classes and we don't do that shit, people actually learn because they get challenged and they get pushed to their limits and all of that fun stuff. But the student has no prior knowledge, prior like, so it's like having them say you're awesome for no reason is based off of what it's you're feeding an ego, and the student doesn't know what a good instructor is and what a bad instructor is. All they know is what you did to reinforce their bullshit. Because if you look at a lot of instructors, they won't really do much about talking about why stance sucks, why stance is important, why um, kinesthetic alignment is important, why the intuitive unsighted fire versus sighted fire. Like the student doesn't know any of that shit. So like they're giving you you're awesome or you're whatever based off of zero prior knowledge. And this gives the instructor this idea that, oh shit, if people say a lot of nice stuff about me, then this is going to be all I need to do is just keep doing that to whatever fucking pleases them. And then you have an instructor who is feeding off of the bullshit because nobody has the balls to say the stuff in class and have the real conversations in class, right? This is why we take the opportunity to have a debrief. This is why we say the stuff now. Don't wait till later. Like fucking say it right the fuck now. We take you more seriously when you say it in person, one-on-one type stuff.
So on kind of on the back of that, I had a class on Saturday, and
Yeah.
I make it a point to, invite challenge to the material. Tell people up front, I want you guys to challenge this. I want you to speak up.
Yeah.
And most people don't. Less than 1% of people will actually do that. But one guy actually started off right when I said that. He's like, "Okay, let's do it." And he started asking me all these questions. And he had quite a bit of background too.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna qualify his background, but he had a lot to support what he
Correct.
was asking about. Um, and
You want that.
that class, I leave that class really feeling like I grew as an instructor and in my own
Correct.
knowledge base because I was forced to reevaluate my own information,
Correct.
like, and not just take my own advice and be like, yeah, that sounds really good, but actually have somebody, I say something and he's like, well, what about this? And then I give an answer. He's like, well, what about that? I'm like, oh, yeah, like we don't talk about that very
Right.
often. So let's have that conversation. Um, I think as an instructor, if you model, your job is to model being a student, and that includes not feeling comfortable and safe in your classroom and not feeling like you have all the answers and nobody can tell you any different, because then you're not a learner, you're not a student at that point. And
Yeah.
the students need to understand, especially the ones who have background with guns, information does change. Some things don't change. Human bodies don't change, but ammo technology changes.
Correct.
Gun designs change, laws change, and the bad guys do change. I talked to an
Yeah.
instructor with a lot of law enforcement background many years ago, and we were talking about bad guys using holsters. And this guy had worked as a narc, and he had worked in some other street level cop work. And he said his opinion was that bad guys are typically about 10 years behind from good guys when it comes to holsters, technique, like general knowledge, all of that
Mhm.
stuff. And I think that number has probably gotten smaller as the internet
Correct.
continues to educate people. Um, but getting that kind of, like, there is a lag behind, but that doesn't mean that bad guys don't learn.
Correct.
And we need to learn as they learn. And so there's always opportunities to update your information around this stuff.
Correct.
And that's why we say, like, I'm not going to tell you what you need, but other than to say that your attitude should be a learning attitude and an
Correct.
educational attitude. That woman in the shooting class last Saturday or Sunday started out from not having shot a gun, and 8 hours later she was kicking some serious ass.
Correct.
the skills that she started to develop in that course would be really formative skills in a fight. If she needed to defend with her firearm, she is going to have a serious competitive edge in that fight with the
Yeah.
skills that she started to develop. But if she doesn't shoot again in that same context for a year or two, she's going to lose most of that. So you take
Yeah,
somebody.
there's still a lot to be said, and this is I get what you're. Yeah, I mean it's not wrong,
Mhm.
but there is always a lot to say. So I had a new shooter the week before, so I had the same day you were doing co-teaching with Jason. I had my own IDS course out in Wiggins, and I had a brand new shooter as well. And the reason we teach the way we teach, right, to Marlon's point, and not the government mandated stuff, that's bullshit. The government mandated stuff, you have to talk about what the government politicians believe is best for the student. And politicians are not gun experts. Politicians are not self-defense experts. But Rob Pink is a gun expert and a self-defense expert. Barrett Kendrick is an expert. Jason is kind of maybe somewhere below them. Barrett, Derek, Chris Gerke, I would add into that. Alessandro, I would add into that. I'd probably throw me in that category in the bottom of the barrel of that shit as well. You're somebody who's developing, like, we're the people, we're the stuff. This is what we argued with the politicians that day, right? Like, if you say we're the experts and you're going to let us do the test, then we need to create the stuff, not what you think that the student needs, because the student needing to know or what you believe the students need to know about legalities and shit like that, it's horseshit. Like, they don't need to know that stuff to defend themselves. They don't. It's nice to know. It's fucking amazing to know, but that they don't need to know any of that stuff when they're actually shooting the bad guy in self-defense. The brand new shooter that we had in my class, I don't know when she's going to come back. I don't know when she's going to do another shooting class. I don't know when she's going to shoot a gun in training or in practice. So we teach based off of empirical evidence. We teach based off of what is real, based off of the best data that we can have, understanding that all data has some sort of failure to it. Not all data is perfect. Even the ones we follow, they have some shit in them. But there is something to be said about one repetition in it. So at least you have a repetition in it. So you
Mhm.
won't be perfect, and to a certain degree, self-defense isn't perfect.
Mhm.
It is better for you to continue front loading and continue practicing and continue training. It is not okay for you to never do this again, but we're going to assume I'm never going to fucking see you again. Hopefully that's not true, but at least you have one repetition. And so it's
Yes. So I like I've been thinking about this a lot lately because
yeah,
I was really pushing. Um, I I think ever since I started doing this, pushing really hard that you need continuous training, and it's really like I think that comes from needing to get to a mindset that one class is not enough. Like checking off the government box is not enough, and that you should be taking this more seriously.
yeah,
But as I've helped develop shooters, especially in the IDS program, in the intuitive defensive shooting, you get somebody who grasps the concepts in the class and is able to apply them on the range in a way, like in a functional way. And I'm trying really hard not to say like they were a good shooter, because we're very careful about how we characterize that.
right,
But somebody who demonstrates an understanding and a thorough application of
yeah,
of the skills in the class, and
correct,
then they never come back again. And you're like, well, I would like to see you again, but
correct,
I do think that you got a really good foundation that if you ever needed this skill again, especially a new shooter who has no bad habits, you are likely to be able to reproduce many of the things that you did here today.
yeah, correct,
Um, and not put this like you can't be good unless you train all the time, because
correct.
that's not true.
Correct. Well, and it all depends on your training, right?
And
So
it
if you're
depends on your training, right?
yeah, so you've got that. This is a really good article for those of you guys that are interested in this conversation. Is written by another gun expert and I would say a self defense. I got to categorize that differently. A self defense expert with guns, Mike DeSargo, which you got to meet, right? Did you meet him? Oh no, you didn't. You didn't go this past time to Reno.
Correct.
Uh, but DeSargo, um, pretty smart guy, really good at the gun stuff. Um, he wrote this article, and it's called, for those of you guys who are just listening, not watching, "The Paradox of Perfect Practice." It's on Personal Defense Network. The role of contextual interference and performance improvement, and it talks about this idea of well, one of the sentences is, as a hood rat living in South Bay San Diego. Yeah, I had motivation to do 100,000 reps, and it paid off, or so I thought. And that's kind of this idea of the difference between practicing correctly and training correctly, and what we're led to believe, right? So I believe the 8 hour class, if it's government mandated, it may be fun, but that's the paradox of perfect practice, right? Like the government decided we're going to have this class, and it's bullshit because it's not in context. It's in government context, but it's not actually in self defense context. And this is what we have to be careful with, and this is what you talk about, is that like the plausibility principle has to be applied in context. You have to
Hmm.
respect your resources in context. um but yeah, it's tough, right? Because everybody comes into this from their own perspective and from their own world. I mean, you have a Marlin who was going to say the LTC course from Texas is amazing, but if you really look at self-defense and what self-defense is all about with guns, we can prove that 99% of the LTC classes, because they're trying to meet a legal definition, doesn't have anything to do with self-defense training. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to do our free concealed carry classes to where it doesn't lose what it needs to and still talk about the bullshit that they want us to talk about. And I'm not going to be shy about saying the shit they want us to talk about is bullshit in our environment. Is it
Hmm.
bullshit to talk about de-escalation techniques? No, it's not bullshit. But let's be honest, like if they're carrying a gun and we're teaching them to use the gun, I'm not going to sit here and teach a student de-escalation skills, because my job as a gun person is to teach you how to use the fucking gun when you need it. If you want to talk about conflict resolution and stuff, like I'll send you to a person that knows about communication skills and talkie stuff. And if you want to learn how to use the knife stuff, then I'll send you to the knife guy. I can talk about storing your firearm. That's an easy conversation, but like we can't pretend that every instructor knows how to de-escalate situations.
Hmm.
And by the way, that's not their expertise. That's not their forte. So this is where a lot of this breakdown happens. Is people want a class to be a a a a certain thing based off of zero knowledge and zero
It's like a wish list of safety,
correct.
and that's kind of like, I think if we're going to be charitable with some of these legislators who really think this is a good idea, not because somebody's paying them or they're just ideologically possessed, but um, you know, training is good. So if we make everybody trained, then that's good. Like that's the charitable way to look at it. And what would we cherry pick to be the best things in a bill like that? Well, let's talk about de-escalation. Yeah, because we don't want anybody to shoot anybody. And so if we teach them how to not shoot somebody, then that's good. That's safety. And
Correct.
then let's talk about safe storage. Oh yeah, don't let any kids get a hold of the guns. That's safety. And just, but without the background of understanding what we're teaching and why. Like,
Correct.
I don't really talk much about gun safety or gun storage in my classes, except in the
home defense class, probably.
relevant.
Yeah. You kind of broke
And
up there. You're not coming in great because you've got hotel internet. So we might have lost him. He may come back.
Are we back now?
Oh, you're back now.
Okay. Yeah, so in the home defense class, we do talk about staring a gun, but it's because the context is quick access, safe storage,
Correct.
right? It's not because it's like, oh, we need to talk about safe storage. And we talk about it some in the beginner level course because beginners tend to have a lot of new things they need to think about at the very beginning. But when you mandate that in a concealed carry class, you're going to have a number of people who that point is going to be completely wasted on because they have thought about it. They already understand it. They've already taken those steps. So we're not all starting from the same point in a concealed carry class. It's one of the reasons why we try to keep our classes flexible in what we discuss and how we talk about it, because we need to know who's in the class.
Correct.
And why we're talking about it. So,
and this is it's a concealed. You're carrying a gun for self-defense. So this is out in the wild where we're teaching stuff that is out in the wild. And this is why context, and we push context so much. But going back to the whole kind of plausibility stuff is this takes away from the plausibility. It adds to the possible, right? Because the possible is the last thing you should be training for, because everything's fucking possible. There's nothing that really isn't possible in this world. So
yeah. So the last thing that Marlon has said was, I see no problem with the refresher course online, but I want it on my terms. And that's like, absolutely. I'm 100% on board with a refresher online on your terms, which would be not a government mandated class. It would be an available course that you could take it anytime you want on your terms.
And for the first class too, by the way,
yeah,
you should not have to take a concealed carry class. A
Right.
concealed carry class that is legally mandated is not something that we would ever be in favor of, because one, freedom, right? That's duh. And then two, once you force humans to do stuff, they don't feel like they need to pay attention, because they're not there on their own will. They're there to please the lords.
Yeah. So I got into plausibility with my last class because I don't remember how this came up, but the discussion was somewhere around this bill. I don't remember exactly the context, but I told the class plausibility principle. Most, or like at least half of you, are not going to go get your concealed carry permit. You have intention to do it, and you won't do it.
You won't.
And then the ones of you who do, most likely will not carry as much as you can or as you planned on.
Correct.
Very few of you will ever come back for more training. Very few of you will take this seriously. And it doesn't hurt my feelings, but like, if we're just being honest, like, let's be honest. So
let's be honest. Let's be adults about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the issue with, so we've got an instructor development course coming up, Memorial Day weekend, out at Triple J Armory. And this is the biggest struggle with us in instructor development is that right there, is this idea that you have to take this seriously. The NRA does not take training seriously. They had an opportunity to set the tone for a very long time. There's another big training organization that I may or may not that is also dropping the fucking ball.
I would say they even had a bigger opportunity than the NRA did, because they started out with a solid curriculum.
So they had the opportunity, right? Again, I won't mention their name because it's not worth talking about it. But yeah, they seem to be good at the media and the social and all that stuff, and the website and the distance learning. And what they fell into is the sales trap. We need to sell memberships. So in order to sell memberships, we have to make this easy. And if we want to sell a lot of memberships, then we can't have instructors fail the instructor course. I want people to name someone who has failed completely, and not for lack of trying, because there's humans who like maybe failed and then just didn't follow up. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about like just actually failed the NRA instructor course, or who actually failed the other organizations uh, certification course. And these are certification courses; they're not qualification course. We can't confuse the two. Certified does not mean qualified. And I don't think I've ever met anybody. And that's why when people say, "Oh, I am an NRA certified instructor," like it means nothing to me. Like my dog can get NRA certified. Um, and in fact, I can promise you that I can have a fucking dog pass the NRA certification. I can have my fucking grandma who's dead go past the other organization's certification course, because all they're interested in having a volume of instructors teach at whatever fucking level, good or bad, so we
Mm-hmm.
can sell memberships. Well, that's very appealing to anybody who wants to be an instructor. It's super appealing, because all I have to do is pay money and have a pulse, right? Because they'll tell me the answers. They'll work with me until I pass this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have us, who is just like, you're probably going to fail this. It's a
Mm-hmm.
50% fail rate. Even if we call it and put a positive spin on it and say 50% success rate, like it's the other 50 are still fucking failing. And
Yeah.
that's because we actually care about the shit that we're teaching. So it's not a matter of having a pulse and paying us money. It's you have to actually want to know the stuff, and you actually have to put the work in. It's a lot of work, that you have to invest, and that you have to a lot of time that you have to invest. Shit, it took me like 2 years just to be active
Mm-hmm.
in the program. And this is after you and I had already made an agreement with Pincus to be the stud. Like, I run the organization Guns Forever National, and I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
be a fucking instructor um in my own fucking in my own organization. This is the seriousness of how we handle this stuff. Like, I run the fucking organization, and I wasn't an active instructor in my own fucking training.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
because
like I've been on this IDS path since June of 20 what 2020 2021 2021 I think.
something.
Anyway, I'm not I don't have the sign off or whatever. Right? I haven't gotten the range sign off from one of the instructors yet. So I show
Yeah,
up at Jason's class, and Jason says, so I'm not really sure if you're looking for sign off or not. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm here to learn. Like,
yeah,
I know that when I put in the appropriate amount of time and effort, that I'll get what I'm working for.
correct,
But like, I'm here to learn. I'm here for opportunities to improve. And like, that's the way I approach this thing. Is I'm not trying to check a box off. I'm not trying to go to
correct,
Pincus or to Barrett or Alessandro and be like, hey, look what I got. Like, I just want to be a better instructor.
correct.
And so, and I think that as we take on the responsibility of teaching what we're teaching, that should be what the motivation is for
Correct.
instructors. Is not what boxes we can check off. And it's the same for the students. Modeling for the students, it's not a box you can check off. Are you better prepared today after this class than you were before you walked in? That's what you should care about. And I get it. Like, people are there because they need the piece of paper. I'm not fooling myself. I'm not like on this like
Correct.
you know, ice cream and unicorns, like everything's good. But that's what I want for the student. And that's the ethic that we're trying to uphold in the classes. No, Marlon, don't. I mean, you've been very engaging. I appreciate that.
Correct.
I don't understand your last comment about the sheriff thing. I don't know if there's some punctuation missing or something, but I just don't understand what you're trying to say there.
Correct.
If you're trying to say the sheriff doesn't know what the law is, we 100% agree with that.
Yeah, we're not going to ever convince any politician, including a sheriff who's a politician,
Mm-hmm.
about anything, right? Like it's just cops and sheriffs
Yeah,
don't know about legal stuff.
and
But yeah,
and I want to go backwards just a second. I'm not trying to talk about myself as like an instructor who's awesome. I'm trying to talk about the program
oh, I'm awesome.
of developing instructors and therefore then students, and the motivation that is behind the IDS program, the program that we have hitched our wagon to.
Correct.
We both started out with the NRA. Immediately, you learn how dumb that is, but you don't care because you're like, oh, I don't have to teach what you're teaching. I can teach what I want. So give me the certification. Let me go on my way. And then we start working with other instructors, and you're like, whoa, what is wrong with this dude? And like, what is so wrong with this class right now? And just trying to diagnose what's
Correct.
wrong with what's being taught. And then getting familiar with the IDS program, which really, if you just take the word program out and you just say, like, we're striving to create better defenders based on objective truth and like effectively teach based on objective truth,
Correct.
which is what I learned from you and what you started with right at the very beginning, in 2011 when you
Correct.
started. And 2011, I think that's when you started teaching.
Teaching, I think it was about 2011.
Yeah.
Because Guns for Everyone we started in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
late 2010, and then I think about 2011 I started teaching. And yeah, I mean, I still remember me being at the training ranch, and I was teaching some of the stuff that I learned in my SWAT training.
Mm-hmm.
When I was forced to do it, which by the way I still think about that, it was so fucking pointless because I wasn't a cop, but because it was state contracts, they wanted us to, and it wasn't even you guys, it was CDHS, which did for Logan. Is it Logan? That's
Yeah.
under CDHS, Fort Logan, and
Fort
some
Logan.
other ones. And then we provided backup for youth corrections and shit like that. But anyways,
Yeah.
so we did the training with Harlan, and I was like, oh, I'll teach this, and it was just like, this is fucking dumb. Like this
Mhm.
is like I don't believe this is correct. It's fun. It's fucking. I think most students who went to those courses, I think the two Martinez's, Dom and Isaac Martinez, were at one of them. And I'm sure like it was good. It was correct information, way out of context.
Mhm.
Like I promise you, these weirdos will never fucking do that shit. Like we were LARPing, we were fucking LARPing. This is stuff that I learned though. This is
Mhm.
me sharing information that I learned when I went through SWAT training, or SWAT-ish training. Even me saying that sounds like it gross to say it because I wasn't the cop that lived the SWAT life and shit like that. But it is the training that I got.
Mhm.
Um, to meet requirements for certain contracts, and the reality is that it was way out of context. So like I think for a while I stopped doing live fire stuff because I don't like, I need to find a better solution to this. I need
Yeah.
to be better for the students. Like I'm
And-
okay teaching low level bullshit stuff, and I'm okay with saying that.
Yeah.
I'm like, let me teach low level shit. But I knew where I was at. I knew where the limitations were. I wasn't going to pretend that I was something that we could have been a pretty large company on the live fire stuff. And then we would have just been like the rest of them that teaches the fun shit.
Mhm.
But it is way fucking out of context that civilians will never fucking use ever in their motherfucking life.
Yeah.
Ever.
And to be fair to the industry as a whole who tries to teach around this stuff, you are teaching something that is really hard to test in the real world. It's like like self-defense, we talk about probability, but the reality of self-defense is like you can't predict the circumstances. You can't predict the relevant factors in the moment. So we're trying to teach to something with no objective standard. It's hard to do. And in my experience of going through several different IDS instructor development instructors, the guy like the top tier guys who are teaching this stuff, and you're still getting some disagreement on interpreting the objective facts. And so if you take somebody who's just like, well, I like to teach, I know about a lot about guns, I retain information really well, I've learned from a lot of people, and I want to teach people. Like, yeah, I don't really fault you for teaching what you know,
Correct.
as long as you're being, uh, as long as you have integrity about what you're teaching, as long as you're striving for the truth. We all get fed a bunch of bullshit as we develop as instructors, and we have to learn how to filter. And what do you use to filter that? And that's where I think IDS really helps, is help you to filter the information into what like is the most useful way of teaching and the most useful information. But again, I'm not an expert on this stuff. This is just my interpretation, but
Yeah.
I get taught something very strongly from one person, and then you go to another colleague of that person, and then you get a slightly different interpretation. That should give you some idea of how difficult this task is.
Correct.
And so now, if you're just full of shit, if you're just you're in it for the money, which is really funny when it comes to firearms instructing, because
Yeah.
like, who has this money that you're talking about? If that's your motivation, then like, I I don't have anything I need to talk to you about. Like, there's nothing there. There's no conversation to be had.
Correct.
Isn't it? Like, do your thing or whatever, but I'm not. There's nothing I'm going to talk to you about.
Correct.
I want to go back to what Marlon said about 5%. He said, taught an immigration class, 5% were legitimately in love with the USA. The rest just wanted to know what to say. 5%, dude, that number is very normal, very common across everything. 5% of people come to our classes really want to be there, I think. 5% of the people who come to our classes will try to continue on their path or their journey.
And objectively speaking, just to challenge you, I would say that Marlon's part of the 5% at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he says I don't need to take another class with
Mhm.
anybody because I've already done one 8-hour class. And again, that's not disrespectfully, that's just the constant attitude. Is like I've done it once, so like why do I need to do this again?
Mhm.
And that's what we're talking about, is just you being honest with your objective, and you may not need to, like you're correct, you may not need to. You've already I don't know your goals, you probably already accomplished your goal to get the card from the government that says you're cool enough to carry a gun. Well then, yeah, then you don't need to anymore. But if you're like serious about defending humans, then you definitely need to again.
Yeah.
Then you need to do more classes, right? Because there's advanced pistol handling, there's um, the unorthodox position classes, two-person armed defense. There's the vehicle stuff, the extreme close quarter stuff. So there's very very many facets to this stuff.
Mhm.
As we progress on that plausibility principle, right? Like the very first class we teach, that is the most likely of things to happen.
So
And
there was another guy in Jason's class, and this was his third time taking the fundamentals
fundamentals.
course. Third time, and
Hobby class
probably,
taker, or like he was just like, let me absorb more information.
yeah, like this is his third time because he wanted to be there, and I think probably his third time in like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, okay. Because we have to differentiate those two, because there's hobby class takers
Mm-hmm.
who show up to classes just because I got nothing to do, and
Yeah,
like
they're
they
covered in
actually don't.
multicam.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
so this guy, um, when it came to the mental processing element of the class, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that it had really sunk in for him. All like as an instructor, you see the subtle things. Everybody sees the big things, but you see the subtle things.
Hmm.
And I'm watching this guy. I was like, dude, this guy has really acquired this understanding. His techniques weren't that good. I mean, his grip on the gun. He was struggling with his grip,
Yeah.
but he also had giant like baseball mitt size hands. Like his hands were like catcher's gloves.
Yeah.
So I think that that's actually normal for when you have more flesh on your hands than you do most people
Right.
have on their entire torso. Um, and but he was shooting well, and he was shooting well within the context of the balance of speed and precision with all the mental processing, So it's like, yeah, his grip was struggling, but his end result was repeatable
Yeah.
balance of speed and precision. And the guy was quiet the whole class. He didn't act like he'd been there before. He's just there to learn,
Yeah.
But we can see a clear difference between people who are shooters but have never been in this context before, and somebody who I would
Yeah.
not call much of a shooter, but understood the
Correct.
defensive context
Yeah.
and was able to apply it. I'm not saying he was a bad shooter. I'm just saying that's not his primary
Correct.
like identity in that defense role. Um,
Correct.
and
And that's always a struggle in as an instructor, right? Because you have people who are hobby shooters.
mhm,
So they like to shoot. They know the stuff, the latest stuff, and it's very difficult to get them to understand the concepts for sure because they're so they're 10 steps ahead, meant
mhm,
like in their like, oh my god, like I wonder how I'm gonna reload, and and then you have the person who's like, I just don't want to die.
mhm. Yeah.
I don't even give a fuck about the gun. I don't even know who makes this gun. I don't
Yeah, he was
fucking
shooting a brand new gun. He was shooting the PD-10.
yeah.
Like the way Jason runs his courses, you
Yeah.
can buy a gun with your ticket for the class.
Correct.
And so
So
he
you
had
get
done
the
that.
ammo, and the class. I think for like 11 or 1,200 bucks.
Yeah, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's shooting a brand new gun that he has never handled before.
Correct.
And making no excuses. He's not like, oh, I shot bad because I never know this gun before. He's like, I'm here to learn how to defend myself. So
Correct.
I don't care what you give me, just like, how do I do it?
Correct. Correct.
So, and I would say a single stack 9mm may not be the best choice for someone with hands of his size. I'm thinking maybe a minigun would have been a better choice.
Fucking perfect grip on a fucking AR-15. Uh,
Thumbs forward. on
yeah,
an
exactly. Fucking
AR.
that should be
Yeah.
incredible.
So
Tad motherfucking Moyer.
what's up, Tad? So Marlon, thank you very much for your participation, your questions, all of that stuff. It's good. And like Miguel was saying, like Edgar gives it to you straight and everything. And honestly, like that can be intimidating for people when they raise their hand in a class and then Edgar shits all over them and everyone's looking around like, well, I don't want to, that was funny, but I don't want him to do that to me. So, being willing to speak up and ask the questions and put your point of view out there is super helpful. The Another thing I wanted to talk about, and it's kind of related, and we talked about this last time, but the concept came up during the class, and it came up in a couple of podcasts I listened to in the last week. People talking about the need to know the law before you shoot, and there's this perception that like you should not do anything that is unlawful when you defend yourself, which I think completely misses the point of how the law works. It is unlawful until we decide it's not. So let's just start with that.
Yeah.
But one of the
It,
things
it,
that
it
came up
is
in the class,
literally unlawful to shoot another human being.
yeah,
We're just merely justifying it in court based off of information.
yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up in the course, in the shooting course, is like the when you draw your gun, right? So it's the coursifier, the drill or whatever was like, you get the command to shoot a specific target, like it's painted, like the number 2 or an X or whatever, but you don't know exactly where that target is. So you've gotten the stimulus that there is something that needs to be defended against, but you don't know exactly where or what it is. And so some of the students in the class were drawing as soon as they got the command. So if the command was star, that means you have to find the target with a star on it and shoot it. So they're drawing their guns as soon as they got the command and then searching for the target with their eyes. And then when they find it, then shooting the target. And the question that came up was like, could you go to jail for that? And then the next question is, if you could, then what is a better way to do that you won't go to jail? Which is missing the point of drawing a gun and shooting somebody. You're doing it to stop the threat. And as far as the answer goes, and people are like, well, you should do it this way, it doesn't really matter for the sake of this question. The question is, why are we basing our decision on how to defend ourselves based on a hypothetical of how that could be interpreted under the law?
Correct.
So
yeah,
you brought up 181702, choice of evils.
Yeah, and it's really subsection 2, right? Like if for those of you guys that want to know the law, 181. This is Colorado. I'm sure your state has something very similar to this. In Colorado, it's in the criminal code 181702, choices of evil. It says the necessity and justifiability of conduct under subsection 1 of the section shall not rest upon considerations pertaining only to the morality and advisability of the statute, either in its general application or with respect to its application to a particular class of cases arising thereunder. When evidence relating to the defense of justification under the section is offered by the defendant before it is submitted for the consideration of the jury, the court shall first rule as a matter of law whether the claimed facts and circumstances would, if established, constitute a justification. So like it's one of these, like, what the fuck, like, you have no say in this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only thing you can, because first it has to be presented to the jury, they have to decide. Before that, it has to go to the court. Is that what it says? Before it is submitted for the consideration of the jury, the court shall first rule as a matter of law whether the claimed facts and circumstances were, if established. And then it talks about, to be honest with you, I need to fucking Google Translate this shit. Either in its general application or with respect to its application to a particular class of cases arising thereunder. So they still have to look at, again, going back to the reasonableness. It's like, you're not going to sit here and, well, is this fucking, is this going to fall under 18172 subsection 2 while you're fucking getting stabbed?
Yeah. I mean, I've had kind of a long day. I've been flying and traveling and driving and all kinds of stuff. Honestly, when I read this right now, like, no 3 words in order make any sense to me right now. And I'm like, and this is stuff I like to learn about. Like, I'm interested. I care about this. But the idea that you would be able to answer this question before or during an act of self-defense is completely ludicrous, and yet very relevant to the way your case will be evaluated.
Yeah.
So this is like what we say, the law matters after you defend, not during, not before. The only thing you really need to know about the law before you defend is that the outcome is always in question. So don't do anything that you don't need to do.
Correct.
So, like, yeah, I mean, and you know, like, I get students in the class who are like, well, then I'm just, I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to go to jail. Like, well, okay, well, you're already in jail. It sounds like you mentally, and the way you live your life, you're already in jail. So what does it matter?
To answer Marlon's thing, like it's hard to lock your doors when you're walking in a park or you're walking in a trail or
Yeah, the
uh,
doors are locked in prisons too.
correct.
Like,
People die there all the time.
yeah, it's like, so you can't take this interpretation of the law as there's no win. There's like a no win situation, and like you are just doomed to go to jail. Because I had somebody bring that up in the class. They're like, well, it seems like likely anytime you defend yourself, you're going to go to jail. I'm like, A, not true, and B, nothing's changed. It's always been this confusing. It's
Yeah.
these laws, these self-defense laws that we have in Colorado and that we have across the country are hundreds of years old. And I don't mean since we wrote them down in the statute. I mean the theory of law behind them. Those five elements of self-defense that Andrew Branca so eloquently puts into a list that we use in our classes: innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. Like those elements, those fundamental things have been there forever, since Western law was developed, since self-defense was a concept, a self-defense justifying violence towards another
Yeah.
person.
Most of the case notes that you'll see, it'll talk about common law, which goes back to the fucking crown. Like this shit goes back hundreds and hundreds of years to fucking the first Queen Elizabeth and the first fucking George, and
Yeah.
like this is back to the Brits.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
Marlon says, and carry pepper spray. That is good advice, because it's a lot easier to explain this to somebody after you've caused some minor irritation in somebody's eyes, that rather than having blown their brains out and being like, well, choice of evils. Having other methods that work in the right context or are likely to work in the right context, abso-freaking-lutely. Very, very, very recommendable. So Joseph
I
said,
actually teach against all that shit. We should make a podcast
well,
talking
so
about that.
you're talking about like,
We probably shouldn't dig into that right now, but like I actually teach against carrying less than lethal.
Okay, yeah, we definitely should. We'll do it on the next one.
Yeah, because it's lengthy. That we don't have enough time to
Yeah.
cover that.
So what did Joseph said? Point of order: less than 50% of Colorado residents own guns, and the majority of voters don't care about the Second Amendment. Both true statements. We are doomed here. Could be a true statement, may not be a true statement. I don't think we need more than 50% of Colorado residents to own guns. I don't think we need a majority of voters who care about the Second Amendment. We just need enough. And I don't. So, what we certainly don't have is enough people who say they care actually doing something.
Correct.
And, I wouldn't like the outcome if we all spoke up like we should and we lost, but I would be able to swallow that a lot better
Correct.
than everybody saying they care and not doing anything, and then we lose.
Correct.
And then it just gets back to like integrity. Do you really care, or you just want credit for caring?
Yeah.
You want that virtue signaling. We make fun of people for virtue signaling, but gun owners are some of the worst virtue signalers out there.
Yeah, and some of the worst snowflakes and some of the worst fucking offended, and
that's just because we're people. I mean, going back to Jason or to Marlon's 5% comment, like, yeah, that means 95% of people out there, don't really have a standard for themselves when it comes to the things that they say are important to them.
Correct.
And I'm guilty of this too in many parts of my life. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm not, but when we blame people for gun laws being the way they are, we should be blaming the right people.
Yeah.
We're a victim of our own success. Like, we've enjoyed victory for so long, we've gotten fat and lazy with it. So,
Correct.
Gun websites, I know you care. You're like autistic in how much you care. You, if anybody's listening to this and is not familiar with gun websites, this dude is a Second Amendment historian of the modern age.
Yeah.
He has done an incredible amount of work, all independent. If he's ever gotten paid, it's never been close to the effort that he's put into his work. Um, I don't know if he's ever like run ads on his website or whatever, but this dude is in it for the passion, and you should check it out. If you're kind of like a gun nerd, if you're like cool websites, if you like learning about the why behind some of the things that are out there, that dude's got a great. He does a podcast too. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, he does. I've been on it once or twice, and then I think he gets too many hate comments for me being on it. He's like, "Do this shit again." Tony Simon is on there quite often. Tony Simon is a guy that does um, a lot of Second Amendment stuff out in New Jersey. So no, yeah, the YouTube channel, go check it out. I was gonna post up his website. Um, he's got a few of them, so I'm gonna try and find them. Well, actually, if you can link them up, gun website, that way people can find them from there. That'd be super dope. I think I'm still on one of them, if that matters to anyone, because I'm a big fucking deal. Uh,
Tony literally is a big fucking
a
deal.
big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you guys have never, if you guys have never met Tony, if you guys have never talked to Tony, he's your stereotypical big dude. He's just this fucking giant of a fucking human, both tall and wide. Probably one of the coolest dudes you'll ever meet. Just a good sense of humor. He's a cool guy.
Somewhere I have a sticker of him in a bubble bath, stuck to one of my cabinets or something.
Yeah.
With a definite like Marvin Gaye "Come Here, Sexy" look on his face. So yeah. But anyway, gun websites. I have been following gun websites for, I want to say, at least a decade, and just some really great information. Yeah, Minuteman University is that the so gunwebsites.com. Minuteman University is another website he runs. Just really great content on there. Yeah. I wish I had more time to read all of that stuff, because it's all like a lot of it's just right up my alley. If I'm not mistaken, by the way, you did you, Mr. Gun Websites, did a breakdown of some of the concealed carry insurance products that were out on the market, and you did it a few years ago. I'd really like to see an update of that, because a lot of these companies have updated their coverages and what they cover. And almost all of them, as far as I know, have improved their product in the last few years. So, like
you're not busy enough. Fucking
Can you do what I want you to do?
Can you fucking?
That's no small task. Like the amount of work you put into that, I was like, damn, son, spreadsheets and all kinds of stuff. But it's really good information, because it's a pretty competitive industry, and I think people would benefit. It took a week. I'm sure it took you a week. I'm sure it took anybody else a year. You are objective. I think that's what I really appreciate about yours. I've seen a few other people who have done breakdowns of the different companies and what they offer, but then you would get to the bottom, you always find out that they're shilling or repping for another, like a competitor, which is fine. Like, I think there is actually valuable information in those breakdowns, and I think that a lot of these people are really trying to be objective. But it's really, really hard to do when they're paying your bills. And I say that knowing that, like, we represent, or not represent, we recommend firearms legal protection. But I recommend them for a few very important reasons about their coverage. But I also tell people, if you have another company, like, you're in a good spot. You are thinking ahead, and you are planning for that moment when you might need an attorney. So, and you said I distrust them all equally, and I think that's fair. Like, you're the reporter. That's your job. You're definitely supposed to be the skeptical, cynical one. Tad says, how's the new CCW law going to work, and how's it going to affect your classes?
So
The new concealed carry law is basically going to require an 8-hour class for new applicants. We have to talk about some stuff. I don't think you're going to see a lot of difference in our class. To be honest with you, I think we may have two options. You may see us run a lot more of the live fire classes, and we'll incorporate the safe storage and de-escalation into that. Like we'll make it a conversation in that point. I'm not going to say too much about it. You'd have to show up to the class, and then there will be a version where it's still the same seminar style, and then at some point you would meet an instructor, because not everybody's going to be able to do 8 hours in one sitting. So that's
Yeah,
going to be tough.
8 hour shooting classes are physically demanding.
Very demanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't believe, because I've been doing this shit for a very long time. I'm probably more a businessman than I am a gun company owner man. So I've always been ready for this. Like I'm actually surprised it's taken this long. So I've been thinking about this for maybe 5 years already on how that would look. Many other states already have the blueprint, unfortunately. So we don't have to adapt too much, but I'm curious to see how a lot of other instructors are going to be able to adapt to this change. But on our front, it's not going to change a whole lot. Me personally, I'm already expanding towards other countries, trying to get into other states, which is different. It's not an easy task. It's pretty difficult. 2021, I'm sorry, 2023, there was, I think, a nationwide 23% decline in the industry overall. So it's hard to move into other areas as the industry is declining. So, and this has a lot to do with COVID still, just the recovery from COVID. And so yeah, I don't think you're going to see a lot of change from Guns for Everyone. We're already working on automating a certain stuff. To be honest with you, the biggest pain in the fucking ass is learning how to do, not even learning, implementing the new issuing of certificates. That's one place where this is how much it's not going to affect us and how much we can adapt. That the biggest thing they're going to fuck us on is that we now have to print your certificates with your name on it already. So all we would have to do is sign it. That is going to be the biggest pain in the ass for us administratively, is to have you take a test, pass 80% on, I'm sorry, yeah, 80% on that test, and then the live fire test 75%, and then we have to, after that, print you a certificate and give it to you. That's going to be the biggest fucking pain in the ass, especially because Isaac does not know how to fucking run a printer.
Dude, you have no idea.
No,
I mean, you do, but you don't. Like, I just got a brand new printer and I'm ready to throw it out the fucking window. Dude, it started shutting itself off. Like, I completely borked it. I don't know what I did, but it won't even stay turned on anymore. Like, I didn't do anything. What happened?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. This law fucking sucks balls. But for us, it's gonna be. It is what it is. There's.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to stop for this evening.
On a downer.
On a total downer. Well, what positive do we have? Let's pick one positive.
We've got nothing.
I did my first intro to TECC.
Yeah.
Free TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care. I want to come up with a better name because I think that from a marketing perspective, most people have no idea what that means. But Intro to TECC course is a 3.5 hour, just kind of like based on that plausibility principle, the knowledge and skills you're more likely to need to save a life in that context. I had a lot of fun teaching that. I'm looking forward to doing more of those, and I'm really looking forward to spreading that knowledge around. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've been missing for a very long time, and I think a lot of it is that idea of we had the experts deal with it. I think it's safe for you and I to say, and I don't think it's wrong to admit, is the reason it's only an intro level class is because that's probably the knowledge you and I can
yeah,
impart to humans is entry level knowledge.
yeah,
I'm not ever going to pretend to be on the level of Spent Brass Training Company,
hmm
who does it very well, a kill. But for one reason or another, it just hasn't been feasible to bring them out. If you're ever in California, go out to Val.
yeah. Southern California, if you should take a medical course in Chris Valenzuela, spent brass training. Excellent. By the way, he's in paramedic school, so he's
Correct.
increasing his knowledge base as well. So
Correct. And then Akil Bay, this guy does survival classes for us. For those of you guys that want to learn shit that you'll probably never use, but fun and good stuff is Akil Bay, and he's also a really good medical guy. He is currently in PA school, so he's going to be a physician's assistant. That's a tough word for a Mexican. He's going to be a PA, so he's in school. He's I don't know if he's still fucking alive. He hasn't text back to any of our fucking text messages.
I did see something of his on the internet from like November. So going back to November, he was still with
He's
us.
still with it.
Um,
He's a special forces guy,
yeah,
so he's really good at like fucking
disappearing.
disappearing. Yeah,
Um,
he's a Green Beret.
on the
Uh,
subject of the survival class, like the survival class, the value of the survival class is putting up with him for 3 days.
yeah, yeah,
If you can survive that, like you've really accomplished something. He is the nicest asshole I've ever met in my life.
yeah.
I love that dude. He
Correct.
is so hardcore.
You know what I like about him? He's a special forces guy that doesn't pretend to know a lot about guns. Like
Yeah.
if you notice,
Yeah.
he's because most people who are special forces, when you try and tell them about guns, they're like, "But I'm special forces." This guy's
Yeah.
like, "I'm a fucking I was medic,
Yeah.
and I know how to do the rifle shit." But like, I don't think you've ever really seen him try and do a handgun class.
The dude carries his rifle in a very unorthodox way.
Yeah,
I mean, the gun stays in the same spot, but I've never seen anybody carry their gun like that.
correct.
And I'm not looking at it like, oh, I should do that. I'm just like, where did you fucking learn that?
And I think if you ask him, he's just like, it's just fucking where the gun is at.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
which is always respectable when humans, especially at that level, right? You're a fucking special operations guy, a Green Beret, and you don't claim to fucking be the, yeah, because you understand context and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Tad, this is going to affect your renewal. So if your renewal is going to be every 5 years in the state of Colorado, you don't need to take a renewal course. As of right now, when this law gets signed, because it's on its way to the governor, it has not been signed, so there's still hope. Like, so if you got a fucking Jesus and you gotta pray to the eight-legged lady or to Allah or whoever the fuck you pray to, crystals, you could light a candle to me. So
We need to be selling those.
yeah, for sure. Put it on the shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta put that shit on the shirt. The reality, that's the biggest thing. If you already have the permit, your renewals every 5 years, you'll have to do that refresher course.
Which is right now it's supposed to be a 2-hour course.
2 hour course, and you have to do shooting in those 2 hours.
Yeah.
So it's basically a range class for 2 hours, and you have to pass a bullshit test. I know Marlon thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. It's the fucking worst thing in the fucking world for humans to do stuff that the government wants you to do, because it's dumb. So a positive for Colorado. Let's see. A positive Colorado is your history's getting mad after being attacked. unfortunately, your state let some bad laws happen, but you also have rejected them afterward. Yeah, the biggest issue with that, to be a fucking downer again, is that there has been a lot of lawsuits. Rocky Mountain Gun Owners has done a lot of good with that. The issue with it in the long run is that the 10th Circuit is not a good path for the Supreme Court. So it's really tough for us to get any lawsuits to go to past the appellates and get into the Supreme Court. Super fucking difficult. This is why FPC, as awesome as they are, will not touch any of the Colorado laws. Like if you notice, if you pay attention, FPC doesn't sue anybody here. And when we talked to Brandon at FPC, his whole take is like it's tough to try and justify spending tens of thousands of dollars trying to fight in the 10th Circuit when there is no path to the Supreme Court. We're not going to get anywhere with it. We'd rather find stuff out in the East Coast and maybe sometimes out in the 9th Circuit, and because that's an easier path to the Supreme Court. And historically, it's been true. Even when Colorado was purple, it was really tough to get out of and we didn't have any bad gun laws other than every fucking law that existed. So yeah, that's kind of the fucky thing. But yeah, you're right in the sense that people are starting to realize, oh fuck, it is happening here. The problem is we got caught with our pants down. We shouldn't have. We've been ringing the alarm since 2013 when they did the mag ban bill. Like we were like fucking ding ding ding. This is the warning shot. This is it. Wake the fuck up. And then nobody unfortunately woke the fuck up.
Yeah. Miguel, yeah, this will be, if it passes, it will be the whole state, the refresher. All right. Well, we tried to end on a positive note. I want credit for that. All right, gunsforeveryone.com, Guns for Everyone National. Go look up the social media stuff around the Gunmakers match and comment, help get some more attention on that. It's very important for you. It's important for the industry. It's also important for the same laws that we're talking about. So
if you've never made your own gun, Mr. Snow makes. I had him up earlier. Go find him on the internet. He's one of the bigger YouTube guys for gun making.
Mm-hmm.
Go hit him up. There's a few other guys, but in the interest of time, in the interest of keeping this short, I encourage you guys to just kind of be intrigued and be curious about gun making, even if you don't fully tip your toes in it. I know 3D printing sounds crazy, or CNCing and shit like that. Like the technology is becoming affordable. Learn about making your own guns. Obviously, you do whatever the fuck you want, but if you don't want to go to jail, look at your local laws here in Colorado, where the fuck you're at, so you don't go to jail. If you're okay with going to jail and taking one for the team, then we fucking do the cross.
Bless you.
We bless you. You're blessed now. But yeah, we need this. We need this to be normal. It's one of those activities that even gun people are like, well, I just fucking go buy a Glock. Like, that's not the point. The point is, yes, you could just buy a Glock. And in fact, for self-defense, that's probably what I recommend, is go buy a gun that's already manufactured, a PD-10, a Glock, whatever, a gun that's already made, right? Like I recommend that. But it's still an activity that needs to be protected by our usage. We need to use it, and we need to make guns at home, and we need to make this a normal thing, not a hidden thing. It's got to be a real stuff.
Also, less retards would be better, and I think you learn a lot about how guns work.
Yeah.
When you do that. So I know I did.
For sure.
All right. Well, hey, everybody in the comments, thank you for all that.
Appreciate you guys.
Helpful. Yeah, all of it. And we will see you again soon. And we'll talk about why pepper spray is bullshit.